Iran and North Korea ramping up their threats against the United States. This following President Trump's UN address. Did the president go too far, or are these countries finally realizing there's a new sheriff in town? Here to discuss, Fox News political contributor and Washington Times contributor Tammy Bruce, Fox News military analyst Captain Chuck Nash, and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Peter Brookes, now Heritage National Security Affairs Fellow. Captain Nash, I got to start with you because the drumbeats of war are loud and clear. President Trump, though, didn't mince any words yesterday. He was not afraid to call out our enemies and also talk about action.
He called out a lot of people, Charles, and good for him, because what he's just done is he's removed any of the ambiguity surrounding this. He's just said what makes logical sense here. He said, if we have to defend ourselves or our allies against North Korea, we will decimate North Korea. That message was for Kim Jong-un, but it was also for Beijing and Moscow.
It was, Tammy, and of course, the normal chorus of people who don't like Trump didn't like the speech, but there were a lot of people, particularly the applause, I think, in the UN itself caught some folks off guard. The idea of sovereignty, countries taking care of themselves, and the idea of getting rid of these bad actors or putting them in their place once and for all.
Well, there's bad actors in every region that are destroying the lives of pretty much everyone. ISIS is certainly in both hemispheres now. You've got terrorism virtually, certainly on every continent. The world is realizing the importance of borders and of being able to control your own country. But we haven't had anyone in Western civilization say this, right? It's not coming from Europe. They're finally hearing it. And of course, the Venezuelan response is, oh my gosh, Reagan is back. Well, that's music to our ears, isn't it? This is good news. And once people get permission to be able to admit that sovereignty, national security matter, yes, of course, they'll applaud. And President Trump is leading the way.
Yeah, it was funny that the guy from Venezuela thought it was an insult to compare President Trump to President Reagan. Peter, let me ask you, because Russia is still playing interference, saying that the speech might have violated some nuclear agreements that we already have in place with them. And it still feels like China, although somewhat quiet, not ready to budge either. And these are two central players that got to come to the right side. They got to move over and unite with America and the rest of the world.
Well, yeah, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, nor President Xi were at the UN General Assembly this week. So it was interesting, that fact. I think they had some things going on. The Chinese have a Communist Party plenum coming up, so I think he felt, President Xi felt he needed to be there. But they're critically important. They're major powers out there. They have influence in places like Iran and North Korea. Of course, North Korea, China borders it, so does Russia. And of course, with Iran, China is a major power, buys much of their oil, and Russia has a long-standing relationship there. So if we're going to have any effect, we're going to have them to play a role. The sanctions are great, but the fact is implementation is critically important. These countries know how to smuggle. They know how to set up shell companies, front companies. So there's always significant challenges. But having these major powers behind us and enforce their interests don't necessarily align with ours in both of these places is critically important.
Sure, I think we just intercepted some Russian ships that were smuggling oil into North Korea. But speaking of acting, Captain Nash, General Mattis has been pretty vocal lately. And, of course, he's always level-headed. It seems he'd rather go the diplomatic route. But he also said something very interesting about the $700 billion that we're passing to spend on defense, that it's not enough. And that if America does not step up, remove these military spending caps, that we are doomed as a nation. Is that hyperbolic, or do you think there's some real truth to that?
No, I think what we have to do is take stock and see what needs to be fixed up after the Obama years. We've been kind of running on empty for a while, and where it's really impacted us is in the manpower, where ships are sailing without all the people that they need, so you've got people working longer and longer hours. The accident rate in the military right now is significantly higher than I can remember when I was on active duty. We were in a downtrend for a very long period of time where we weren't having as many accidents. Now the safety record is really being challenged, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people are they're being overworked and they're really tired.
All right, Tammy, diplomatic solution. Rex Tillerson's working it hard. It sounds like Nikki Haley all but gave up on it this week, saying that the UN Security Council has done all it can do.
Yeah, if you were to see with the cameras during President Trump's speech and they would go to Ambassador Haley, if she was a flight attendant, when there's turbulence, you look to the flight attendants to know if you should worry. I was getting ready to be in the crash position because the look on her face said it all. None of these people should be playing poker. That was serious. It was the end result. It was at the end game. So we've got to. It's clear. Sanctions, diplomacy. It's been 25 years. It's not only it's not stopped Iran. It certainly hasn't stopped North Korea. If anyone is going to stop them, it's going to be President Trump, and there has to be action. If there isn't action, and Ambassador Bolton's mentioned this as well, it means we are doomed. So this is key. It's not about partisanship or even rhetoric.
Right.
It's about keeping the nation safe.
Let me ask you, since you brought up scanning the crowd,
Yeah.
that the photo went around with Kelly and his hands over his face.
Sure.
Was that just an awkward moment, or do you think he wasn't ready for Rocket Man and all that kind of stuff? I mean, is he still getting to know President Trump and to understand that there are going to be times when Trump will be Trump?
Oh, look, this is a speech clearly that was written. This is not the president off his cuff. So everyone sitting in that room with the United States, including Secretary Tillerson and Kelly and Haley and everyone else, knew what was going to be said. So there's no reason to react that way. I think with photographs, as we know, one split second of moving your hand or moving your face
Sure.
is there forever. It's like Muhammad Ali standing over the fellow he beat. It seems like forever, but it was like a split second that was in motion. I think there's too much made of it. It's the silly gossip that happens, and them searching for anything to make it look bad for the president.
And that one guy, that fellow, was Sonny Liston.
Yeah, Sonny Liston.
Peter, we're talking about being doomed, the clock striking midnight. I mean, obviously, we are coming to some sort of conclusion here. It just cannot go on like this. North Korea cannot continue to launch missiles over Japan, get the capability of extending those missiles further and further, having them be able to carry nuclear payloads. They can't keep exploding these nuclear bombs that are certainly effective. So from all your experience and everything that you know about the military, diplomacy, war, where do you see the end game?
I don't see an end game happening anytime soon. There's lots of tough choices to be made. I think we're moving into a Cold War situation in Asia with North Korea, like we had with the Soviet Union during the Cold War, where they have capabilities that we have to defend and deter against, and that would include strategic and conventional deterrence, strong allies, developing our missile defenses. Taking on North Korea from a military standpoint is challenging. You have to think about what China will do. You have to think about what Russia will do. You have to think about your allies in Japan and South Korea. So there's no easy choices. I wish, Charles, I could tell you this is the way to solve this. We have to continue to put pressure on North Korea. My concern is that North Korea doesn't have a price for its nuclear program. For a couple of decades now, they've been offered economic development, political recognition, peace treaties, unification with the South, and they've not taken it. I'm not sure there's a price they're willing to give up for their nuclear program, because that makes them important in the international system.
And I'm not sure we want to offer them anything anymore, because every agreement we've made with them in the past, they've broken it, and they've continued to march toward this nuclear doomsday scenario. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.